Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, malware analysts have a dirty secret, and we'll share it with you. Microsoft puts out the warning signal, and the International Space Station gets infected with malware. Then it's a great batch of your questions, our answers, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 136 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems network and administration podcast. We stream this episode live on November 14th, 2013. This episode is brought to you by our two great sponsors, GoDaddy.com and Ting.com. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this show goes on. And our live stream is powered by Scale Engine over at ScaleEngine.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Alan, you were just making me drool a little bit on the pre-show because while I have been marred in technical difficulties all week long, even before this show, you're over there like, I might get direct gigabit fiber to my house pretty soon.
Working on it.
It's going to be so awesome.
It's not going to be that soon, I don't think. Sadly.
Well, when it happens, are you going to build a data center in your house? Like a mini data center?
The rack will be full of servers and stuff. It won't be quite a data center. Well, it will be. It just won't be a high-tier one.
Right.
The way Scale Engine works, we have some servers where it's okay if they go down. Basically, our global server load balancer will just route the traffic away from them, and it'll be okay. So those type will be fine in my house. And so will one of our disaster recovery servers.
So if you lose power for a few hours, no bigs.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's nice. Very cool.
Plus, the power's never been out here for that long.
Yeah, actually, in my place, I really haven't had much problem either, which is funny because where I grew up, power outages sometimes lasted 5-6 days long. It was awful. And we had
the longest one I ever had was during, other than the Northeast blackout, I think there was one ice storm where we were out for a couple hours.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hours? Really? That's it?
Yeah.
Are you talking about as a kid?
Literally kind of built up. Yeah. And we live in kind of a built-up area.
It
was like a small town.
Boy, I just pictured Canada was just horrible up there with the power because all the snow. Right.
Well, snow doesn't hurt power. Ice.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, that's true. That's when we had our biggest power outage. It was from an ice storm. And, as I got older, it's funny, my response to power outages have changed because now my response, well, I don't know what it'd be now, but back in the day it was, oh my God, I got to get into the data center and make sure everything's shutting down properly, right? I got to make sure the backup generator kicked in. Oh my gosh.
Right. Well, I've been lucky with data center stuff is that, they have to take care of all that.
So I don't know if we'd say a big show this week, but a well-proportioned show. There was a whole bunch of technical issues I was working through for the live stream. In fact, I go into a lot of detail about what some of those are in this week's episode of Linux Unplugged if you're curious, but it's it's studio stuff. And so I was working through that, so light on the emails. So I went in and I laser focused in on our subreddit. So we've got feedback from our subreddit this week. I know we've got some stories, so should we get started with our first news story this week? All right, Alan, where does it bring us? Where do we start?
There was an independent blind survey done of 200 security professionals that work for large U.S. enterprises, conducted on behalf of ThreatTrack Security, which is the site where we got it from. And they found that 6 out of 10 malware analysts that work for big U.S. enterprises have investigated or addressed a data breach that was never disclosed by the company. So, something was on the DL. There was a malware infection or something that caused data loss or data to be leaked, and they didn't tell anyone.
Yeah. Of course they wouldn't, right? And we speculated this. We speculated that what we hear about is just the tip of the iceberg because it's bad PR for these people.
These results indicate that the known data breaches may be significantly underreported and are putting customers and partners at risk. Because, if you're a customer of a company and that company loses your information and they don't report it, that's bad. In Canada, we have very specific laws about this stuff, although, those can be flouted as well.
Yeah. 6 in 10 malware analysts at U.S. enterprises.
Yeah, so this is people that work for large enterprises that have like dedicated malware analyst people. They're hiring these guys specifically because they're getting malware attacks all the time, and then they're not telling anyone. Also, according to the survey, companies that have more than 500 employees are even more likely to have unreported breaches. So the bigger the company is, the less likely they are to actually tell people when they get hacked.
Now, do you suppose? Okay, so because you get into the question of what is a hack, and you also get into the question of what should they be disclosing, because perhaps some of this stuff becomes so commonplace that we shouldn't have the expectation that they should raise their hand every time somebody knocks on the front door. And I guess,
Well, it depends on your definition of what's an attack.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to hear every time someone at IBM, gets a phishing email. But if
Right.
data is stolen off a server or something, then that's important, right?
yeah, absolutely. So do you think this is kind of one of those things where it comes down to protectionism? They're trying to, keep their reps protected or whatever it might be?
I think it mostly has to do with stock. Yes.
Yes.
They don't want their stock price to go.
Of course. Of course. That's exactly it, isn't it?
But then that's why the SEC is starting to make rules about you have to disclose when you're these data breaches.
Right, as we've covered here on the show, yeah. Doesn't surprise me too much. You got to figure too, though. I guess one more in their defense, just trying to play devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that malware infection might not even, or whatever you want to call it, attacks, might just be from employees looking at porn, right? I mean, it could be internal stuff.
Some of these attacks, we're not talking about data breaches per se. But yeah, they said a device used by a member of senior management at a company. The most popular ways for it to become infected are clicking on a malicious link in a phishing email. Mm-hmm. That's happened to 56% of all of the companies. Allowing a family member to use a company-owned device and then it gets infected, 45%. Visiting a pornographic website, 40%. Installing a malicious mobile app on a cell phone, 33%.
Now, how the hell is that possible?
I don't know. They're running around installing shit on their iPhones, I guess. I don't know.
I doubt it's the iPhone, to be honest, I mean, it's got to be the Android device with side loading, but then each user would have to turn on side loading.
Yeah, I don't think they're turning on side loading. And I think it is definitely a large portion of iPhones.
Probably. Maybe web malware, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the smartphone thing is really interesting because I can't remember if it was this week. I covered it in Unfiltered last night, but it came out that the NSA and GCHQ set up faked LinkedIn and Slashdot phishing sites.
You're stealing stories from later in the show.
Oh, sorry. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention in that is part of that story is they were also using malware-riddled mobile apps, and they were getting on the phones and they were turning on the microphones. Like, this is actually happening. Yep. So, I mean, the mobile thing, well, to me, it's like, how is that even possible? It is already happening, right? And I just don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, all right. Any other thoughts?
And they also said that the most difficult aspects of defending a corporate network are advanced malware, the complexity of malware. A lot of this stuff is getting pretty sophisticated.
Yeah.
And the guys that are fighting it aren't getting more sophisticated as they go, then they're going to get left behind, right? 67% also said just the volume of malware attacks. Mm-hmm. It's hard to go in depth and to figure out how each piece of malware works when you're getting hit with all of it all day, right?
And we've seen like a big change. Like there's obviously there's mobile, there's web, there's things that take advantage of zero-day exploits and Java and PDF and
just more and more people using the devices and not knowing how to secure them. And
isn't it interesting though that in the name of security, these devices we've been getting things more and more locked down. They get more restrictive of how you can use them, and yet the malware problem.
That's not the device being locked down by Apple doesn't protect you from malware. You not clicking on phishing links protects you from malware.
It kind of goes and spits in the face of all of this closed ecosystem mantra that we hear.
Because the closed ecosystem means that it's harder for us to actually investigate malware.
Yeah.
Because the phone's so locked down.
Yeah.
And it's like remember we had that, you said that you didn't think it was iPhones because Apple audits all the applications or whatever.
Well, or just that you can't install software on them. Like they don't let you unless you do it through the App Store.
Yeah, but the App Store doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Remember we did that story from that university, they made an app and they found that Apple ran it for a total of 7 seconds.
Right, yeah. Yeah, they just check like the APIs it calls on. Well, and really if you know of a vulnerability in the OS, like you look at how many of these rooting apps, like one of the early ways I rooted my first iPad was I went to a web page that took advantage of a PDF viewer vulnerability that's built into the web browser and actually got root access to my iPad and flashed it with cyanogen or not cyanogen. Forget what the Apple thing is called, but anyways,
Yellow Snow or something.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like from a PDF exploit, Alan, in the web browser, like it's crazy. So it doesn't matter if the App Store is locked down.
And there's nothing stopping somebody else from using that PDF exploit to do something other than root your phone,
right?
Or specifically to root your phone, but not for your benefit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they also cited that 58% of them cited that the anti-malware solutions are not effective. the company's like, oh, well, we don't need to hire malware experts or anything because we bought this anti-malware software. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it helps, but it's
Behavior
not
is really
solving anything. Yeah.
I mean,
It's kind of, we talked about that solution that one company was offering where they come and help you build fake phishing emails. And
right.
then when your employees click on them, they get training.
They shame them.
Well, no, it actually, instead of infecting their computer, it tells them what they did wrong.
Everybody should probably do that and call it an audit.
Exactly.
Auditing employee behavior.
Exactly.
Well,
or auditing the effectiveness of our anti-malware training.
I guess, really, this is all just a temporary problem until the robots take over. They'll not be dumb enough to click on phishing emails. They'll, of course, once robot malware comes out.
But if they're on the Wi-Fi and there's a known exploit for their embedded firmware, then...
That's how we'll defeat the robots after we finally figure it out. But first of all...
No, that's how someone else will use your robot against you.
Oh, that's dark, Alan. That's dark. Very good point.
Well, I'm not saying that the U.S. government lost control of one of their drones and it crashed.
No, that did happen.
Along the border of Canada.
Oh, is that recent?
Like yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why do we have drones patrolling?
No spying on Canada or we would fuck up your shit.
and that, Alan will take care of that himself. And so you guys better watch out. You better watch out.
Lake Ontario. I live on Lake Ontario. No spying on Lake Ontario.
What, are you skinny dipping?
No, I live beside it.
Okay. All right.
And the Americans were flying along the border, and all of a sudden their drone was gone.
We won't mess with you. We won't mess with you, Alan.
Better not.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, any other thoughts on that story?
No.
Don't mess with Canada, or else you're Zed. Too good. Okay. See, that's our live chat room, you guys. We're live on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
Over at jblive.tv. 2100 UTC over at jblive.tv.
Daylight savings time.
It's fake. It's all fake anyways. And jblive.info for the audio, and you can hang out in our chat room. We have it embedded right there on the live page. All right, Alan. Well, I want to thank our first sponsor this week, and that is the great folks over at GoDaddy.com. Now, GoDaddy has been sponsoring the TechSNAP program for a long time, and they're kicking it up a notch with their website builder. It makes it easy to create your own website, to put your business online with it, and find new customers like that. Choose from hundreds of customizable designs, and you're on your way. Website builder even includes a free domain, hosting, and 24/7 support. Hosting, free domain, and 24/7 support. It is go time. Visit GoDaddy.com and enter the promo code WSB7 to get Website Builder for only $1 per month for 12 months. WSB7, Website Builder 7. This is so cool. So they're taking the hosting, they're taking the platform software where you create your site, and they're also spinning off mobile. They're doing SEO optimizations, and they're all integrated into one stack. And we've had a bunch of people in our audience just go out there to claim their own page. That way they can own their Google rankings when people search for them, or they can set something up on their site. But it'd also be great for people that want to throw something online. They don't necessarily know all of the HTML tricks. Of course, you could go in there and play with the code if you do. And they also want mobile, and they want to take advantage of all the latest SEO trends that are always going on. Well, GoDaddy's going to take care of all of that with their website builder. So go over to GoDaddy.com, and when you're checking out, use that code WSB7, and you're going to get Website Builder for $1 a month. And that's going to include the domain, the hosting, and the support for 12 months. So go over to GoDaddy.com and take advantage of that. Go claim your place on the web, people. I do not want to see you stopping by and saying, Chris, whenever people search for me, they get pictures of people getting teabagged. And then you know what my answer is? You should have got a domain. You should have set up a website, and you should have owned that. It's on you for not owning that. If you're trying to get a job, if you're trying to get a client, if you're trying to get into school, if you're trying to impress a girl, I don't know, maybe, you should have your own website. Otherwise, I'm not going to name names. But there's certain people I know that if you Google search their name, you get pictures, you get articles on Gawker about them sexting people. Okay? And the reason they did that is because they sat back their whole life and they never bothered setting up their own website. And they never got that prominence in the Google search rankings. And so now those sexting texts are up on Gawker's websites, and when you Google for this person, that's what you get. And then their pages that they've now set up later are like way, way, way down. Like way, way, way down. Don't let that happen to you. Don't let that happen to you. So go over to GoDaddy.com and use the code WSB7 when you check out. Longtime sponsors of the TechSNAP program. So thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. I think this is such a great idea they have, too. Because, for people like me, I don't got time, Alan. I don't got time.
Yep.
Now, this next story, you kind of, it's something big when Jacob Applebaum and Microsoft are saying, stop it right now. And it makes you think, okay, something's going on. People know about something big. So, Alan, break it down for us. What's happening?
So Microsoft has issued a pair of TechSNAP bulletins urging developers to stop using RC4 and SHA1.
Wow.
So RC4 is a stream cipher,
Yeah.
and SHA1 is a cryptographic hash.
Yeah.
And Microsoft also said that they will stop recognizing the validity of SHA1-based certificates after 2016.
Okay, so that's not super right away, but that's at least a firm date. So
Yes.
this seems to be, this is like not Microsoft saying like, hey guys, you should stop using NTLM. It's like, no, we're done. You got to cut it off.
Well, basically, they have this nice little timeline on their site comparing the timeline of MD5 and SHA1. So like MD5 was published in 92. In 93, there was some kind of pseudo-collision attacks. And by 2004, there were identical prefix collisions and then chosen prefix collisions. And then, by 2009, there were, people had got it down pretty easily. And there were rogue certificate authorities doing practical attacks and actually, making fake certificate authorities would be by brute forcing the MD5 hash. So with SHA1, it was published in 1995. And by 2005, there was collision attacks. And by now, we even have chosen prefix attacks with significantly reduced key space. So based on that, by 2016, we'll be to the point where MD5 was in 2009.
Wow. Wow,
And
that's
so
unbelievable. Really,
to give time people to change, they're changing it.
It is actually totally believable, but it is the
Although
first time.
I don't think any for like main certificate authorities, like the ones trusted by Firefox.
Yeah.
I don't think you've been allowed to use anything less than SHA 256 since 2012.
Oh,
December of 2012 was when they kicked over, and
Okay.
it has to be SHA 256 or better. But a lot of people are running smaller CAs for like code signing and stuff that Microsoft deals with, and so Microsoft recommends that certificate authorities stop using SHA1 for digital signatures and consumer requests and do SHA2 instead.
In this bulletin, they've even told people, like, here's where you go in the registry to just really disable RC4. We don't want you using it even by
So
accident.
RC4 is an encryption algorithm that's had known problems for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But it was very popular to do SSL with it because it was really low CPU. Like I remember when we did a survey not that long ago, we found that Google was using it for like when you go to Google Docs, because you don't need that much encryption necessarily.
I thought Microsoft used it heavily for the SMB protocol encryption, but I might be wrong.
This isn't related to that.
No? Okay.
They might still use it for that actually.
That's what I thought, but I don't know.
But this is for an Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer up until recently kind of still preferred RC4, but in Internet Explorer 11 it will not.
Okay.
I don't even think RC4 is. It's like heavily depreferenced, and soon it will be not an option.
Okay. Yes, SMB
It said,
Tennessee
since
Frank is.
2005, there have been known collision attacks where multiple inputs can produce the same output, meaning that SHA1 no longer meets the security standard of producing a cryptographically secure message digest.
There you go. Wow. Now, and like I mentioned earlier, Jacob Applebaum tweeted out. He said, he tweeted this November 6th at 4 a.m. He said, "RC4 is broken in real time by hashtag NSA. Stop using it." And then now we have this bulletin by Microsoft. It's got to be related, right?
Yep.
And it's interesting to see this is sort of Microsoft not publicly saying any comment on the NSA situation, but just saying, "Hey, we've identified the NSA is broken. Let's stop using it." It is sort of.
They don't mention the NSA at all. They're just
No.
saying this is known to be broken. Stop using it.
You just kind of have to put the two things together, but it seems
Well, because
like they'd be
once
related.
one person can break it,
Right.
then once you know it can be broken, you can try a little harder to break it, right?
Well, isn't this the concern about the whole weakening the standards that they tried to...
Well, yes, this is the concern with the NSA purposely putting something that they can exploit into anything, is that somebody else will
Everybody
find that
could.
and exploit it.
Yeah. Once you know.
You can't make an exploit that's only for you to use.
Yeah, especially when you do it at the standard level. Well, good on Microsoft for doing this. I wonder if... I'd be curious to hear from our TechSNAP audience, like, if this creates a certain amount of hardship for them and somehow, because I'm failing to see how this is like going to be a big upset. What am I missing? It seems like not a big deal to me.
If you disable RC4 on your web server, there's a chunk of browsers that won't be able to connect over
The older
SSL.
browsers, yeah. Okay.
And so a lot of people have left it on. And it also means that somebody doing a man-in-the-middle attack might be able to just do enough to make you downgrade to RC4 or something.
Too bad there isn't like a nice way to just put up a banner that says, stop using Internet Explorer. I guess you could. I guess you could do a browser detection.
Lots of websites used to do that.
Yeah. Or, well, what I used to get all the time was, this site is best experienced in Internet Explorer. Click here to download. Do you remember that back in like the IE4 and 5 days?
Well, yeah, that was a long time ago.
I know. But maybe it's time for their...
And at that time, I was like, why would people use Netscape? Or Netscape.
I know. Netscape Aggregator is what they used to...
Yeah.
Aggregator.
I called it Nutscrape. And then there was Oprah instead of Opera.
And then you had Internet Exploder, right?
Internet Explorer,
Yeah.
Internet Explorer, the best browser for downloading a better browser.
And then you had Outlook, which everybody called Lookout because it was so awful. I mean, the whole class of applications from back then... but this is the era that this reminds me of. It's sort of like we're in all of the ways that we move forward, we still suffer from some Internet Explorer danglers. Yep. Like we had in the subreddit about was it South Korea, North Korea that has to use Internet Explorer because of some sort of policy.
It's South Korea, yeah.
Yeah, it's like really,
yep.
No, stop it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on that one?
No, that's about hold on. Yes. Sorry, that is the end.
All right.
Sorry.
So, no more thoughts? Oh, okay. All right.
That's the end for that story.
Okay, well, very good. And we'll have links if you guys want to check that out in the show notes, especially if it impacts you, and let us know.
Quite a bit of more technical detail if you want to dig into it there.
You can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and then pop that contact link, choose TechSNAP from the drop-down, and just say, hey, guys, it impacted us this way. And because I'd be curious, because I'm not quite grokking how it's going to bother you, but maybe it will. All right, well, let's thank our next sponsor, and that, my friends, is Ting.com. Ting is mobile that makes sense. My mobile service provider. Ting is an MVNO of Sprint. So if you've got good Sprint service in your area, you're going to get great Ting service. Now, one of the awesome things about Ting is no early termination fees and no contracts. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. I've been using Ting since about the beginning of the year, and I got my HTC One. I've had a couple of different phones, tried a couple of different ones out. I love the HTC One, so well built, but there's lots of good phones over at Ting.com. So this is how you can get started, because I think you're going to be pretty impressed. Go to TechSNAP.Ting.com. That's going to take $25 off your first month of service, or if you got a phone that's Sprint compatible and it's on the Ting list, bring it, and they'll give you $25 off your first month. Here's why you might want to do that. Average Ting bill per line, 21 bones. That is not too bad. 21 bones per month. I think my bill right now is sitting around like $14. That's not too bad. You think about it. So, like, take for example in our IRC chat room right now, Mail Hauler's in there. He just got back from driving 2,300 miles. His whole family is on Ting, and he loves the savings he's getting from that. And he's driving all over the place. And one of the great things that Mail Hauler has is he's traveling around the United States of America delivering our goods. Is he's got free hotspot and tethering that just included. So they just count towards your data. And you just turn them on and you just turn them off. You don't have to have some sort of special plan. You don't have to be in some sort of shared family plan. And Ting is pay for what you use. What? Yes. You can get a cell phone where you only pay for what you use. Use a lot for the holidays? No big deal. Ting makes it super easy to track where you're at. Don't use very much the rest of the year like myself? Then you're in like Flynn, because Ting will only charge you for what you use. Each line, 6 bones per month. That's all you pay. 6 flat bones per month, easy sneezy. Additional lines, you just add them, you got them. You don't have to have some crazy plan. It's just $6, and they all share pooled minutes. So every phone is on the same plan. You all are paying for what you use, and it's got super simple dashboard, very straightforward, but also very powerful, combined with an awesome Android application. So go to techsnap.ting.com to get started. Go check out some of their phones. And if you're a little worried about, I'm currently in a contract, I'd love to go to no contract. That way I'm in control and I own my phone. I'd love to do that, but I'm in a contract. Ting's got you covered there too. Go to ting.com/ETF. Early Termination Relief Program. Yeah, that's right. They're going to take up to $75 off each line you have to cancel, my friend. That is really cool, and it's super straightforward. You get your Ting device, you port your number, and then you submit your ETF claim. That makes it easy. Click on that savings calculator, too, while you're over there. Just see how much money you're going to save while you're considering switching to Ting. Once you look at the numbers, once you look at the ETF relief program, and you look at some of their great phones, and you consider that once you start only paying for what you use, you're really going to save on the long haul. Well, you better do it now, just like Mailhauler did in our chat room. So go over to techsnap.ting.com, and thanks to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Loving my Ting.
Yep.
All right, Alan, moving right along in the news as we chug along. Next is coming up the feedback, which is
What? No, we still have another story.
But we do have one more story. And that is the International Space Station gets infected with malware.
Yes.
Did you see the original headline was it gets infected with Stuxnet?
Yeah, it was a little confusing.
Yeah. So what's going on, Alan?
So the malware came on board the space station on a USB stick that was being carried by a Russian astronaut. Apparently, the problem seems to have been that the laptops on the International Space Station, and there's more than a dozen of them, run Windows XP.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And nobody bothered to disable auto run, apparently. And so when they stuck the USB stick in, it auto ran what was on the USB stick and infected the computers, and then it spread and so on and so on.
Oh, boy.
So Russian security expert Eugene Kaspersky, who's founded Kaspersky Labs, also told journalists that the infamous Stuxnet had infected an unnamed Russian nuclear power plant. And he says that in terms of cyber espionage, all of the data is stolen globally, at least twice.
I can believe it.
So, it's just showing that this malware... So it's confusing with that reference to the nuclear power plant. The way that came up was... So the International Space Station, the computers that got infected weren't connected to the internet.
Right.
So it was weird that they got malware. But then there's, even this Russian nuclear power plant that's completely air-gapped from the internet also got infected. Again, USB sticks and things like that. He says, Kaspersky revealed that the Russian astronaut carried a removal device into space which infected systems on the space station. He didn't elaborate on the impact that these infections had on the operations of the International Space Station. But it sounds like they're mostly just on the machines they use for stuff.
Wow.
He also said that this is not the first time that there have been a number of virus epidemics on the space station.
Are you s-ing me?
Well, if you're getting a bunch of astronauts from a bunch of different countries and they have to share files and stuff.
You don't use Windows. I mean, I don't mean to be like a hater here.
Well, they have since moved away from Windows on all of the laptops.
It is so unbelievable how SE Windows can be for some of this stuff. And
well, especially XP, that's kind of dated.
I know. And could you imagine that tech support call? Like, Houston, we got a problem.
Well, I think these guys are generally fairly up on their computer stuff.
Could you, all right, I could just picture Chris, the contractor, working with his NSA client up on the space station. Okay, Mr. NSA, Astronaut, what do you mean the mouse is floating away? That's just a horrible tech call.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, remember way back in the day that one of the computer networks on like a U.S. aircraft carrier ran Windows NT.
Yeah.
Or even I think some of the ones on like submarines ran Windows NT for a while. So,
yeah.
Very true. There's a long history of bad computers and systems. Anyway.
It's just too funny that here we are. I mean, this didn't happen super recently. I mean, it happened a couple of years ago or whatever, but it to me reveals how important it is when you pick something like this. Like, I guess maybe they could have scanned the USB sticks before they allowed them to go up or something, but...
Yep. Well, they just should have disabled auto run, and the virus wouldn't have infected the computers as soon as you plugged it into the USB slot.
Can I be conspiratorial and say maybe there was more to it than just that? Like maybe these are government-issued thumb drives to government employees. Maybe they put malware on there intentionally. I don't know why they would want to, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're doing stuff up in the space station I don't know about. Who knows? I don't know what the benefit is in spying on them, but there you go. Even tech support up in the space station. Just think about what it's going to be like in Deep Space Nine's time when they got all those Cardassian viruses, Alan. It's going to be awful.
Well, you remember it was like episode 3 or 4 or something like that. The station was trying to kill them all.
Oh yeah, that was a great episode too. When
it was designed. If the Cardassian administrator didn't poke something every so often, it would assume the Bajorans took the station back and then self-destructed.
Well, and they triggered it because Cisco and his kid went down into like one of the mining facilities, right?
Right.
That was great. All right. Well, your thoughts on that one?
No, but there's links to a lot more detail and some more about the Stuxnet infecting Russian nuclear power plants.
Wow. Talk about, something honestly getting a little out of control and maybe creating a little bit of a monster. And now, the other thing, too, is when all of these people get infected, they have a copy of the code, right? So they can make their own Stuxnet now.
They can reverse engineer it, yeah.
Good job, U.S. You just unleashed a monster onto the internet. Woo! Yep. USA. Home of the free.
Well, it was only meant to go to the one place and not be able to spread. But
yeah, they played with a weapon that they didn't have a full control over.
It reminds me, you remember the Code Red virus from 10 years ago?
Yeah. Yep.
It was all set up so on a certain day, it would reboot all the machines and erase itself.
Yeah.
Seems like it would, because it was spread pretty bad and made quite a mess of the internet. The problem they didn't consider was time zones. So computers in different time zones all shut down at the same time and erased the virus and rebooted clean. And then the computer in the time zone ahead that hadn't rebooted yet would reinfect them.
Yeah.
And then it would be past that date, so they would never reboot it and erase the infection again.
Well, and you look at, it is kind of weird how this stuff almost organically spreads. Like you look at the way CryptoLocker, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show.
I just saw the perfect title for the show.
Oh, nice. It is really just kind of one of those things where these things so often get out of the original creator's control. So often. And then here we are with something like Stuxnet that is very sophisticated and can be damaging if you have the right Siemens nuclear reactors or whatever, but whatever they were, refinement machines or whatever. But.
Right. But more importantly with Stuxnet is just knowing that they had
the capability.
Known 0 days that they weren't disclosing to anyone.
Right, that was big, right? That was the big revelation.
Of making viruses.
Yes, that is really, I think, looking back at Stuxnet a year on now, that does seem to be the big thing. Is they were actively utilizing somehow, either through purchased means or by direct cooperation with the vendor, 0-day exploits for Windows and other things too. So, pretty crazy. Yep. All right, well, before we run, I just want to let folks know if you'd like to support this show and the rest of the network, keep us on the air. Just one quick way you can do that is go to jupiterbroadcasting.com and use our affiliates. We have those linked at the bottom of the show notes, or every page, actually, for Amazon, eBay, Netflix, ThinkGeek, Best Buy, Mint.com, Audible. We also have Chrome and Firefox extensions. You load those in your browser. They're open source. That way you can check on them if you get a little nervous. Those tag your shopping session, and they will automatically, that way you don't have to worry about it, right? So then you're just shopping, and you're contributing a little something to the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. We have a huge 2014 plan, and we could use your support. So please, as this holiday season approaches, go grab those browser extensions or click those links before you shop. We greatly appreciate it. All right, Alan, with the news all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP at jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This week, I was fighting some technical problems, and I didn't even get a chance to open up the TechSNAP inbox. So, we did a little bit of extra focus on our live chat room. Alan grabbed an email, and we also pulled from the subreddit. So we're kind of doing an abbreviated one here, but it actually ended up.
4 questions is normal length.
Yeah.
So.
All in all, it's pretty much the regular length. So, if we didn't get your email this week, we're going to try to get to extra emails next week. So don't be mad. I'm sorry. If it was time sensitive, I'm sorry. I always recommend if it's time sensitive.
Time sensitive, you have to pay for us. Time anyway,
right. Yeah, so. That's true. All right, Alan. Well, our first email comes. Actually, it's not even an email. So go screw yourself, Alan. It's a subreddit post, and it says from Canalot. Have you guys done a segment on CryptoLocker? I'd really like to watch that because people are freaking out, and I feel out of the loop. So,
admittedly, I'm out of the loop because I just don't care.
I know. Here's the thing. We have talked about it in passing a couple of times.
And we sent people to the Bleeping Computer website because they have the information, and
so I think
made more sense than regurgitating it.
Both Alan and I feel like this is just a new iteration of ransomware, and it is getting an S-ton of attention, which I actually think, first of all, it is bad, but all malware is bad. It doesn't necessarily deserve the amount of attention it's getting, but it has become so popular now to make your bones on covering this stuff that people are hyper-covering it.
Well, there's a bit of that. Mostly it underscores the fact that people don't back their stuff up.
Right. Like, so best practices, this shouldn't be happening in the first place. But The other thing about it,
best practice, if you have a backup, then you're like, ransomware.
but
Okay,
don't you
reform
think?
it, restore
And now
it.
I realize this is sort of like security through obscurity, but don't you feel like all of this additional press is getting it? We're going to have like a ton of copycat type malware,
Partly, yeah.
and I hate that.
The most interesting thing about CryptoLocker appears to be that all the cryptography was done correctly.
Yeah, and that they're taking bitcoins or money packs, which I think is pretty cool. But I mean, not cool like good, but like clever.
Yeah.
I can respect the ingenuity. So no, we have not done a dedicated segment because we don't really do a dedicated segment on any particular malware until we have a good example of it being really like somebody broke into some sort of corporate network with it or something.
But yeah, it's kind of old news by the time we got to it, and I don't know. It's just not that interesting to me.
I don't know. I really feel like it's not much more than it's just more of the same. It's just getting a lot more coverage. People are dedicating a lot more time to it, which is good to raise awareness.
Well, it is most malware you can just clean up. This one's a little more complicated.
I guess I also feel like we're all living in an era of cyber scare, and everybody's scared of everything that's happening in cybersecurity, so we're over-reporting it, and that just doesn't really happen here on the TechSNAP
it kind
show.
of reminds me of, when software firewalls for desktops first became a big thing.
Yeah.
Zone alarm, black ice.
Yep.
And I just remember, people flipping out, somebody's trying to hack into my computer. It's like, that was a port scan, or that was something you initiated.
Yeah.
I got one the other day. They're like, your server is trying to hack me. You should be shut down and call the police on you. I'm like, if you read that log you just sent me, that was you connecting to us, not the other way around. It's like, did you happen to maybe go to cbsnews.com? It's like, yeah, like 3 minutes before this. Like, yeah, there's an advertisement on that website that loads off of our server.
And I want to be clear because Q56 is making a great point in our chat room right now. It is happening. People are getting infected. You can find lots. I mean, I'm not saying it's not happening, right? But about once a year, there's some piece of malware that really gets traction and spreads like crazy.
The big deal with this one is that it's not just trying to use your computer to send spam or make money. It's not. The big deal for this one is that it's holding your files hostage.
Yeah, I mean it's ingenious in its evil way, but we give more coverage to the ones that are stealing bank account and stuff. I guess the reason why we give coverage to certain ones more is that there's a chance that those ones would actually impact people that watch the show. I don't know anyone who watches TechSNAP who got CyberLocker, because if they watch TechSNAP, they should know better. They should be patching their ass, and they
and not. I don't actually know. Did they ever say how you get CryptoLocker?
I don't actually know if I have read that. I'm sure it must be through the web, right? I mean,
well, yeah, but it's like I don't think anybody's getting drive-by downloaded with CyberLocker. It's like if it's a phishing email and you have to click on it, or it's a .zip file with a PDF in it. Well, then that's your own fault.
Yeah. I mean, we are sympathetic, but we aren't at the same time, right? I mean, it is one of those things.
If you have your Java updates, then you're not going to get it. So install your Java updates or disable Java in the browser or whatever you got to do.
Yeah. All right, you ready for the next one? This one comes in from Ruma Shatalaga Ding Dong. I'm not kidding you. I don't know if you see that name. It's something. Here's the question. FreeBSD as a transparent DNS. Hello there, dear tech snappers, Chris and Alan. I've just recently installed an OwnCloud instance in a jail in FreeNAS due to a crappy router which cannot be replaced. I needed to also install DHCPD. This is my first true FreeBSD admin project. Our OwnCloud server is reachable via dynamic DNS service via the web. That is nice for people working at home, but in the company, it's kind of stupid to have the server standing in-house and route all traffic through the internet and then back in. I know I'm able to send my IP as a name server to clients in the network, but I have no clue how to make the public URL, rcloud.dnsprovider.eu, get routed to an internal IP of the OwnCloud server. Getting into named seems a bit much, but I only need this one URL to point inwards, and all other URLs should be resolved normally. How can I do that?
Okay, there's a couple things. First, if you're connecting to your external IP from inside your LAN, the router should be smart enough to just turn that around and not actually ever leave the LAN, because you can't go out onto the internet and then come back, because you'd be like saying, I need to go here, but you're coming from there. So
Right.
the next hop's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, it's smart enough to figure that out.
So if you do a trace route from inside your LAN to your external address, you should notice that it doesn't actually leave your LAN.
Yep.
Now, depending on the structure of it, if your LAN's like big and has segments, you might actually be going hops you don't need to go. Or some routers aren't smart enough that when you try to connect to the external IP, they route it out to the internet and then it just doesn't go anywhere because it can't figure out where to go. And so it just doesn't work at all. And that's different. But like a pfSense, there's a setting specifically whether or not you want to allow people to connect to your external address from inside.
Right.
To do that kind of inverting of the tubes. In general, it wouldn't. So in that case, you're probably not actually going to experience much of a case of performance loss. Although, a small commercial router, you could be
do a trace route to be sure.
Right, but you could still just be making all the traffic bounce off the router instead of just go through a switch, which would be bad anyway.
Yeah. So what about host file or something?
Yeah, you can do a host file on the machines, although that's harder to manage and doesn't work so well with lots of different computers. Especially if it gets to be a few machines. Your real option there is named, and it has what it calls views. So you can create a view saying if the request is coming from inside the LAN, then use this zone file. But if the request is coming from the internet, use this zone file, and so on. In this case, you would.
He's in the chat room.
Do that.
He's in the chat room right now. He says it is. He says it's, at least as performance-wise, it seems about as slow as it is over the internet. So it actually sounds like it is going out over the internet.
Maybe it is bouncing up to the ISP and then turning around.
How could that be
even
happening?
Just one hop? Well, it could be one hop, right? Because the router would send it out with a destination of itself. It would go to the first router at the ISP, which would say, "Oh, I know how to get to that IP. Go back." Yes, it's called NAT loopback on most routers. So it's possible, depending on how many layers of stuff that you can create some problems. And yeah, if the performance is bad, then it could hurt. If you have a gigabit LAN and then a 100 megabit router, then you could be bottlenecking performance.
So this is an area
where you would want to solve the problem.
This is an area where taking that little crappy router out of the picture and putting a real device there, even if it's just a pfSense box, which makes it super, super easy to manage DNS. And like, for example, here at my house, my pfSense router has DNS forwarding set up so that I can set up some local DNS entries, and I have a handful, and then every single other DNS request is just forwarded on to the next DNS server defined in the pfSense box. So I have just my LAN machines in there, and then the rest, it all just manages for me. Click, click, done. I mean, pfSense makes it not so easy.
Yeah.
How hard is it to do a name?
Do it with just named, it would be pretty easy.
Okay.
So the stock config, you'll have to change a couple things. So it's FreeBSD, I think he said. So in the stock config, you would change the listen on address, which is normally localhost only, so it's not open up to the LAN at all. You'd have to change that so it listens on your LAN IP address. Okay. Then there's the forwarders clause, where currently I think it says nothing or localhost or something. You would change that to the DNS servers you normally actually want to use, like your router or your ISP. So now when you start up named, that named is going to accept requests from all over your LAN and just forward them to the next server.
Right.
And do some caching. So now you've created a caching-only name server. You're pretty good. Then you need to create an authoritative name server. So basically you add a zone block to that config file that says, this server is authoritative for your DNS address. And you point it to a file. And then in that file, you'll just make it point to your local IP address instead of the internet side one. And then if only the clients inside your LAN are using that name server, then only they will get the spoofed IP address. And then you can add a second one for Facebook and route all the Facebook traffic to a page that says stop using Facebook.
I'm with I understand where RMH is coming from. It's like, I don't want to go through the process of setting up named and learning it, but
there's some lighter ones that will do it. I just don't know how to do it off the top of my head. I've never used anything because I've always had to do heavy setups in named, so even for light things, named was already set up and running, so it was just...
Yeah. Here's my advice on this kind of thing, Alan. Is like there's some things where I'm totally that guy, and I'm like, yeah, you don't have to learn this, so don't bother. But like named or bind, like those are good ones to learn. Like even if you got to spend a little bit of time, might as well go ahead and get that one down because that's going to come up again. Like you're not going to get through this. You're not going to get through your career and not need to know those things if you're a sysadmin. So maybe now's the time to bite the bullet because, my friend, let me tell you something else. You will never be more motivated to get off your butt and actually learn how to do it until you have a problem to actually solve. So take advantage of this opportunity, friend. You're there. then go learn it. It'll be worth it. All right. Our next email comes in from John. He says, long-time listener, and I want to say you guys do a great job. Please keep it up. Anyway, my situation is I expanded out of my current backup model and looking to make a change. For the last several years, I've relied on a cron job that kicks off each night on my desktop that runs a script to rsync all of my files to an external eSATA drive. Most of my files are large media, with the rest smaller personal data files. The external drive is a single 2 terabyte Western Digital Green, and it's about 95% full, considering a NAS setup, maybe FreeNAS or Synology, with RAID 5 as the new backup. However, the real question that keeps nagging me is any setup is a long-term data, with any setup would be a long-term data integrity, meaning since a lot of these files get accessed infrequently, maybe annually or less often in some cases, what happens when random sectors go bad on a drive that are within some of these less accessed files? Assuming since you're not accessing it, you'll never know the file was corrupt until you need it, aka until it's too late. Assuming also that you could accumulate a large number of these bad sectors over time and across the drives, you would never know. By the way, due to cost trying to use only 3 or 4 physical drives, prioritizing integrity over performance. Maybe I'm wrong about how RAID or physical RAID Z handles these latent issues, or do I even need to care? Although some would really make me feel better in some type of regular hash check. Is there any type of process that handles all of my files that will periodically go back and rehash and compare the signatures? I know it would be an intense, so maybe a monthly check? Any insight would be appreciated. Paranoid in Philly.
All right. That's a great question. And the answer is ZFS does that.
So he's worried about data rot, right?
Yeah, or bit rot, or random bit flips and problems like that. So RAID Z, like RAID 5 won't do that. Like a hardware RAID controller or something like the Synology or whatever, none of those will do that.
I want to take issue with him calling it backup to begin with. RAID is not backup, right? So we got to make that clear.
No, but this is he's backing up to this device, and he just doesn't want his backups to rot.
As long as it's not the only copy. But it sounds like it might be his only copy.
Well, no, sorry. He's got his copy on his computer, and then he's copying that to the NAS as his backup.
I will accept this.
And he doesn't want his backup to rot.
Right.
Because, if the file doesn't change, it sits there for years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with typical RAID 5, because it doesn't have any kind of hashing, it won't even know that the file's corrupt. It will just return it corrupt, and you will find out when you try to use the file and it's corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
ZFS, what it does is when it writes the file, it writes out a hash with the data. And it also writes takes a hash of the metadata, so it can detect when the corruption is not in the file, but in the metadata of the file.
That's awesome.
And it hashes like the whole tree every time. It's really complicated. There's some great visualizations of it that help explain it.
Oh, man.
Anyway, so every time you read a file, it compares the hash and would know, hey, that's corrupted. And if it is corrupted, it will use the redundancy of using RAID Z with one or more redundant drives to find the other copy of that block and fix it. Right? It'll return the right one to you, and it will fix the broken one on the disk with a copy from the other one.
Magic file system.
If you don't have any redundancy, ZFS will still detect the corruption and will return an error when you try to access the file. So rather than returning corrupted data, it would say, no, that file's corrupt.
Okay.
But you definitely want to have redundancy.
Now,
this is the problem with some people will do, like, make a RAID 5, like a hardware array, and then run ZFS on top of it. The problem is when ZFS detects that corruption, it can't fix it because you have ZFS doesn't have a second copy because you're relying on the hardware controller to do that.
Can I ask you something, though? Because this is, great answer. Not what I was expecting you to say at all, because I was expecting you to mention the ZFS scrub aspect.
I was going to get to that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right. So just saying, don't use hardware RAID 5 with ZFS on top because ZFS won't have a second copy of the block to recover from.
Right. Okay.
If you do have to use hardware for whatever reason, you should make at least 2 volumes and then have ZFS use both of those, and then you do a mirror, or if you can create 3, then a Z1. Right? So, if for some reason you have to use hardware RAID, you have to make at least 2 or 3 volumes so that you can ZFS can have a second copy of the file to actually recover from.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yes, ZFS will do the hashing every time it reads the file. But in the case of archival storage, where you're not reading the files very often, ZFS has an operation called scrub. So you do zpool scrub. And what it will do is read every single block on the hard drive and check the hash.
And he was considering FreeNAS. FreeNAS does this by default monthly.
Yeah, FreeNAS by default does this monthly. I only do mine once every 3 months because of the performance hit and the fact that only all my important files are accessed all the time. So yeah, running the scrub will read every file on the hard drive, or every block even, and check the hash. And if it's not right, we'll recover it sooner rather than later. And if you do zpool status, it will tell you the number of times it's seen things like this, including the passive ones from, when you're just accessing a file and it found the problem and recovered it. I think I have one. I'll show an example in the chat room too. But,
okay. All right.
But basically, the scrub will go through the entire system and find any file or any blocks that may be corrupted or failed to checksum or whatever.
Yeah, if you paste it on the chat room, I can show that on the screen.
Yep, I'm going to do that right now.
That's cool. I like the fact that...
So I actually have a system with failing hard drive.
Oh, really? Oh, that sucks. Oh, man. I like the fact that the ZSF... So I can kind of see where he's coming from, because the ZFS scrub to me is kind of like... it's like a health check. It's, checking in on all the files, a little doctor checkup.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can configure that to run on whatever basis you want.
It's kind of funny. The chat room was saying it's almost gotten to the point now, and I agree, that it's like if you really want to be serious about this, your options are only ZFS at this point. Because a lot of file systems they have other things to them, but ZFS is, out of everything, it's about the data integrity. ZFS is so about the data, that's like its defining feature.
People are trying to switch to it and are disappointed because it's not super performant. Well, ZFS sacrifices performance specifically for the purpose of integrity.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, did you put it in a Slexi?
Yeah, well, it was many, many lines.
Okay, all right. I got it up right now. So this is from your failed machine?
This is a server that's dying.
Oh, it's dual 4. Oh.
That's Germany 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what am I looking at here?
Scheme that would actually that's the output of the zpool status command. So you can see the status is one or more devices have experienced an error resulting in data corruption. In this case, because of the way the drives are set up, the error happened on both drives. This, I think, actually suggests that the problem is the RAM. Anyway, we're getting rid of this machine entirely. But anyway.
Yeah.
So it shows the files and where the problems were.
That's cool. That's really nice. So you actually get an idea of exactly which files are affected here.
Well, normally it doesn't list the file if it can recover it. And these are files that it wasn't able to recover.
Okay. Very good.
It's just the one server in Germany. The other 5 work fine, and this one's not in production. It's being decommissioned. But you can also see it reports the last scrub. It managed to scrub all the data in 1 hour and 17 minutes and found 2 errors on August 4th.
Yeah. So I guess our advice would be go FreeNAS, and then they'll just set up a monthly cron job that does the ZFS scrub for you.
It's actually set up for you, so you don't have to do it.
Then you got a good long-term storage solution that's...
Exactly. It's great for archival storage. That's why companies like SpectraLogic that specialize in cold storage like that are basing their products on ZFS.
ZFS, right. All right. Euristo wrote in from the IRC. We took this one live. He says, I'm starting a new job, and Zach. And he says, I feel like I may be a little in over my head. It's at a medium-sized hosting company. What is some general advice you can give me to make my first month a lot easier?
I'm guessing this is like web hosting, so it would be like Linux mostly?
Maybe, yeah. I was going to say...
What flavor of Linux they like and learn about it.
Well, what I was going to suggest is I don't know what they're running, right? I mean, it's kind of hard to say, like... So it would depend on what you guys are doing.
Good chance it's CentOS.
Maybe go... If it is Linux, like Alan's suspecting, he's probably right, check out Proxmox. Set it up at home. Proxmox will let you create a virtualization system. You can create private networks. You can play with stuff. And whatever area you feel the weakest in, go abuse it inside a VirtualBox or a Proxmox or a VM. Take advantage of recreating that setup in free virtualization. I mean, this is something we didn't have 10, 15 years ago at this level of performance when I was getting into the industry, that when I wanted to try something out, I had to go break a machine. Like, literally had to just break the production system in my case. If I had Proxmox or VirtualBox or VMware back in the day, well, I'd have been banging the hell out of stuff in there. So that's what I would do. Is if they're doing Apache and CentOS, like Alan is kind of guessing, then throw Apache and CentOS in there and just experiment. And
But another good one to do is, I'm sure they have a ticket system. Go through old tickets and see what the common problems are and what the recommended solution is and stuff like that, so that when you get that common ticket, you know what the standard answer is.
another one in the chat room. I like these Reddit guys. They're in the chat. Oh, no, he was in. We got that one from the chat room. Of course he's in the chat room. So he says, yeah, it is a lot of Linux. Some BSD. There you go. Proxmox, virtualization. Go look at their ticket system. Recreate some of those problems. I think you'll be okay from there. And also, don't feel too bad. There's probably some other guys there that don't know fully everything.
Yep.
Find the seasoned guys.
So next week, write back and tell us something you're having trouble with, and we'll help you more.
There you go. There you go. All right. So it is.
Or the right answer is convert every one of your coworkers into a TechSNAP viewer.
Problem solved.
That's my recommendation for how to survive at a tech job.
There you go. Problem solved. All right. If you'd like to get a hold of the TechSNAP program, there's a few ways you can do it. Like these fine folks did, you can create a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv, or go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, pop that contact link, and then choose TechSNAP from the dropdown, and then boom, put in your IT question, scenario, problem, war story, whatever it is. We'd love to hear it, and then we'll read it on a future episode of the TechSNAP program. But Alan, with the feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that didn't quite fit at the top of the show, but we still love to talk about them, give you some links to follow up on your own, and some of these links came from our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Alan, I assume that typing means you're ready for our first Roundup story, and that is, this has been making headlines everywhere. Europe allows in-flight 3G and 4G broadband.
Yes. So we talked about the other week how the FAA was going to allow you to keep your Kindle.
Yeah.
Since it was when it's the Wi-Fi is disabled, it doesn't transmit
in airplane
anything.
mode. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now during flight in Europe, they're going to let you make phone calls and use the internet.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so many tests on this kind of thing, and it is telling you, like, they actually call it airplane mode, right?
Yes.
That's pretty sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. Although, do you really want people making calls on flights when you're flying?
Not particularly, but I've also noticed that unless you're, just flying from Europe to Europe or something and not going very high, when you're at 30,000 feet, there's no signal anyway.
Yeah. It's only for when you're on the tarmac, maybe when during takeoff. I don't know.
Well, and I know sometimes you get stuck waiting a long time or, taxiing for like 30 minutes to get to the other side of the airport. But also, if you're on more of a puddle jumper type flight where you're only going up to 10,000 feet, you might actually still get a signal.
Very true. Now, we've seen a few studies that have cropped up over the years. Who knows? Google's done a really big one.
But Google redacted a lot of information, and that study was quite a few years ago now.
Yeah. So we got a new one from Backblaze. Of course, you guys are familiar with Backblaze. They're kind of famous for creating their own storage solutions. And they just released this comprehensive report on how long hard drives last. And they've tested 25,000 hard drives in this study. And they talk about how they are used, the type of analysis that was used, the number of hard drives. And then they have some fancy charts. And I think they show their personal growth, which was kind of interesting, how many drives. They almost have 30,000 hard drives now in 2013. Yep. But they show also sort of the median failure times in this report. And it's about...
So are you looking at the graphs?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So the general predicted failure rate, the bathtub graph.
Yeah.
You can see that at the beginning of the graph, they have the infant mortality. So some drives will die like right away.
Yeah.
Google found that as well.
I have too.
The most common time for a drive to die was in the first 30 days, or even the first 15 days, really.
Yeah.
Then you have this baseline rate of just drives that fail for mechanical reasons or whatever. And then you have the wear out, which starts to ramp up over time. And, the older a drive gets, the higher the chance are that it's going to fail. So then the next drive, you can see that, they have this kind of spike, the drives that, die kind of soon, and it trends down. And if a drive is 2 years old already, then the chance of it dying before it turns 3 is really, really low.
That's the sweet zone. Sweet spot right there is 2 years old.
But after 3 years, things start to go to pop.
Quite a bit. and like 3.5 years is like the serious danger zone.
Yeah.
Which is concerning for me because I have dozens of hard drives running 24/7 that are all about the same age. And I have experienced as they've gotten probably about 3 years old, actually. they started popping like significantly. I mean, people who've been following this show know that I had to earlier in the year replace a ton of drives, right? And they were all about the same age. So my experience does kind of actually mirror exactly what Backblaze has here.
Yeah, these drives have 3 distinct failure rates. Is pretty interesting. So in the first year and a half, the failure rate is 5.1%. And most of that is actually within the first couple of months. And then for between 1.5 years old and 3 years old, the failure rate is less than 1.5%. If a drive's more than a year old, the chance of it making it to 3 years is very, very high.
That's awesome.
And then after that, once it gets to 4 years, the chance of it failing is upwards of like 12% a year. Yeah. But they found that after 4 whole years, about 80% of their drives are still working.
So what I find really interesting, and maybe I used to work with a guy where he would get a new chassis in-house, like a new, super micro chassis with a motherboard and processor and RAM, and he would take all of the drives from the old server, even though it came with all new drives, right? He would take them all out, and he would take all of the drives from the old server and put them in this brand new super micro chassis and his reasoning was, I know these are good drives, right? I don't know those are good drives. And I used to think, man, you crazy. But actually, if you look at this, if they're about that 2.5 year point, the problem is
if they're at 1.5 year, that's when you want to keep them still.
Right, but he was doing older drives.
If they're at 3 years already, they're approaching the end of their life.
Right, yeah, and that's when he was swapping them, so it's kind of risky. But for those of us, we were just talking about data integrity and long-term storage, right? We were just talking about long-term storage.
The best way to solve the problem you were just talking about would be to create mirrors so that you have all the old drives and each one of them would have a new drive partner that would be a mirror of it, right? And then eventually as old drives die, and then that one would promote to be the parent when you add a new drive. And if you were using ZFS, as you did these upgrades, once you took out the small drive and had a bigger drive as the slave, your array would grow automatically. Like I just did this actually. I had a server with a pair of 1.5 terabyte drives, and one of those was failing. So I pulled out the failed one and put it in a 3 terabyte. And once it resilvered, I pulled out the other 1.5 and put a second 3 terabyte in. And the array just popped.
You Droboed that thing.
No, I ZFS'd it. Drobo would have lost my data.
Oh, ouch. Also, 80% of drives last 4 years is another thing they discovered. 80%.
Yeah, so they found that after 4 years, 80% of the drives are still working.
Yeah.
And then they did a little projection. They're like, so in 6 years, will we still have 50% of those drives? But I think, the trend is going to get even sharper. I think they'll be down to less than 30% of their drives by 6 years, I think.
Well, and we start.
Although I have a bunch of 5-year-old hard drives now, and they're still working.
Do you get a little nervous?
250 gigabytes.
Do you get a little nervous?
The servers that are running them they don't even have mirrors. So when the hard drive dies, the whole machine's gone. There's nothing useful on those machines.
Okay.
Those machines are worker nodes.
Yeah.
The files they work with are over NFS. So they just NFS mount some stuff and do work on it. So if they go away, no one will even notice.
Yeah.
You didn't notice when we took one of them down, except for one of the services it ran was still important, so I moved it to another box, and I kept the IP address, and then the NFS wasn't mounted, and it caused like 1/8 of all using your website to throw that error.
Yeah.
But I fixed that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've decommissioned 2 servers, and we're working on decommissioning 2 more to make room in our rack for our new 100 terabyte storage servers.
Ooh, oh yeah. All right.
I was just looking at this, and I marveled. I remember thinking, when I looked at this design, I was like, oh, they're going to fit. Was it 75 petabytes? Oh no, sorry, that's their total thing. But they fit 45 drives in a chassis, and I'm like, well, I'm going to get 36 in a chassis. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's not.
And mine are hot swappable.
They have a. I mean, I love that they're sharing this kind of info. So we'll have the whole link. We'll have the whole thing. Go read it, you guys.
I wish Google had given us this level of detail. They had a lot of detail, but the more interesting part of Google's survey was they had drives from a lot of different manufacturers, and then they anonymized the data, so we couldn't tell make correlations about the fact that most of the drives they had that failed were Maxtor drives. And that's why Maxtor went out of business.
So let's talk about Skype. Let's talk about Skype, and this one could affect you.
In our very first story, you said by the sound of your typing, I can tell.
Yeah. This one could impact you. Skype is evaluating adding typing suppression feature. At a press event in Stockholm, Sweden today, Skype confirmed it is evaluating the addition of a typing suppression feature to its desktop clients that automatically filter out the typing sound from your fingers hitting the keys. Unfortunately, the Microsoft-owned company isn't ready to ship the functionality yet, despite it being available in the company's enterprise-focused link tool. Now, what's interesting is Hangouts kind of has something like this too, although what Hangouts will say is it'll do a little drop-down and say, hey, we've noticed you're typing. Would you like us to mute your mic, or it like auto-mutes it or something like that? This is talking about actually removing that sound?
Just filtering that sound, yes.
That's cool.
So that if you start talking, you're not still muted or whatever. Now, if a lot of users are using a laptop with the built-in laptop microphone,
those which suck.
And when they type,
they own
it's
it.
like, it's like you thought my keyboard was loud.
Right, yeah.
You're talking about what if my microphone was inside the keyboard?
Right, pretty much.
Like,
attached to the keyboard, actually, quite literally, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And, I would like to see an algorithm that can manage to filter out my MX players. But also, I don't want to. I don't know. The TechSNAP audience would shed a tear if they couldn't hear my typing
I feel like
anymore.
it's like a third character of our cast.
Yes, it's the third host.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Cisco is threatening an open switch is coming, and it could be coming from Facebook, Intel, and Broadcom. What the hell is this, Alan? This sounds ridiculous.
So you know how Facebook has been working on this open hardware project?
Right.
Where they have Intel and AMD servers, and it's
actually been pretty cool.
Yeah, and they're basically having open specifications for hardware, so you just order these servers instead of having to...
like a Cisco... like a device...
Yeah, so this is Intel and working with Facebook to build a switch, and Cisco's like, patents or something.
Right.
You can't do that. Stop stealing our business.
Right. Huh.
But these look really cool. They're going to be 48 port, 10 or possibly even 40 gigabit switches.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, 48 10 gigabit Ethernet ports and 4 40 gigabit Ethernet ports for uplink.
Oh. And when they say open, does that mean like I could build my own? Like, what does that mean?
Well, the specification would be open.
But you'd need an ARM chip. You'd need the backplane.
Yes, but you could probably custom design part of it. Yeah. So like you could decide how many ports of what you wanted.
Especially if I was going to do something at scale, like I was going to build out a data center, I might go to that trouble, right?
Yeah, like if you're building a Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, should we talk about Amazon? They've done something crazy. I'm really glad you stuck this in the roundup because I completely forgot about it. Amazon launches Workspaces, a virtual desktop on the Amazon web services, like Windows 7.
So yeah, this would be a Windows 7 client running on EC2, basically. And they would charge $35 a month, or you can get a faster one for, I think, $50. 60, sorry. And it's an extra $15 a month if you want Microsoft Office, and they include a virus scanner.
$15 a month for Office.
And a virus scanner. You get a virus scanner with that.
Oh.
They don't say what one.
No, probably McAfee. Or Norton.
Or Microsoft something.
So this is compelling, like, as a BSD user and as a Linux user, you could think, I could deploy Linux and BSD now, and for that one application, we'll have people connect to cloud instances. But then you see $50, $60 a month, and also, by the way, we only have clients available for Mac and Windows. We're going to have mobile clients and nothing for Linux or BSD.
Yep.
So, like, what? Like, who needs this then?
Well, see, now their target isn't individual people, though.
Right.
Their target is business. They have this business case study here for if you had 1,000 users, if you did the cost to do...
like Citrix or terminal services?
Yeah. So for that, you would have the server hardware with all the compute hosts would cost $20,000 a month. And then you'd have to pay for management hosts with another $2,000, and then database another $3,000. And the storage hardware, apparently amortized at 1 month, it would cost $25,000 a month for storage. I don't know what the hell they're storing. And then, you need $5,000 in network hardware, all this. So in the end, to run 1,000 workstations with a VDI, virtual desktop something, it would cost $106,000. Or you can pay Amazon $45,000 per month.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I actually wish this was a little more reasonable because I think I'm actually a candidate for this because I don't have any Windows boxes active in my house. I don't have Windows anywhere anymore. And every now and then I'm like, shit, I kind of wish I had this Windows program. But I'm not going to install a Windows partition or even a VM for that one fleeting moment where I could use it. But I would spin up an Amazon instance of Windows, remote into it, run the application I need, take advantage of Amazon's speeds and all of that kind of thing, and then be done.
Well,
but
I
I'm
have
not
some
going to.
questions about the speed a little bit, actually.
Oh, really?
If you're comparing this to having like a Citrix or Microsoft Terminal services running inside your LAN,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, if you're going to move your 1,000 employees to Amazon workspaces,
Yeah.
you're going to spend that extra $50,000 a month you save on an internet connection.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way the savings they have on this page is ridiculous.
Yes.
A Windows machine, well, so is the argument, I guess, is does a Windows machine cost $60 a month to an enterprise?
If you amortize over the course of 3 years, possibly. Well, see, you can't get rid of the Windows machines. People still need some client to connect to this. This would just be replacing Citrix or something like that.
Right. So you basically, if you got a Mac and you need Windows and you don't want to do virtualization, which is awesome on the Mac.
Well, I think most of this would be Windows on Windows even. It'd be just running an application in the cloud instead of on your desktop or on a Citrix server. I don't actually understand the case for this.
It seems like a
that
pretty
they're trying to make. I can
like
see people using it individually.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what Amazon's actually trying to do here.
How do you not have, I guess you're right, because, I mean, not having a Linux and BSD client or a mobile client yet, that's a huge hole for this.
Well, yeah, like how is it not just VNC or something?
Yeah, or RDP. Why is it not RDP? That's freaking built into the Windows operating system. It shouldn't matter.
With Windows 7, you would have to have Pro to be able to RDP into it.
Okay.
Windows 7 Home can't do that. Well, that might cost more to license.
Yeah, I suppose it would. All right. So this
I don't know. They don't actually say what version of Windows do you get, right? Like they say 7, but it doesn't.
Amazon's just getting crazy. And meanwhile, they're screwing up on my orders.
The virtual desktop is a reskin version of Windows Server made to look like Windows 7. So it's not Windows 7. It's a Windows Terminal Server.
So they're just using terminal services.
Or something to that effect. So I don't understand how that's not just RDP.
Pretty uncompelling, really. If you think about it, it should be just RDP if it's just, yeah.
Well, I imagine every machine doesn't have its own IP address or something, so that's what their client does. So it may be possible to make this work on other things. The interesting thing we were wondering was if you can run something else on it. If it's just a virtual machine,
probably
then
not, right, though.
could you?
Don't you think they have?
Could you have a PCBSD desktop as a service?
Depends on how they're doing the remote connection. If they're just forwarding RDP,
but it depends if they're actually doing a full virtual machine for each one of these, or if it's just some kind of containerization on the Windows Server and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And then if it's just containerization, I have lots of questions about the security. So it says no hardware or virtualization software, access to the browser or tablet device. Oh, so it sounds like it's a browser plugin. Monthly pricing, no long-term commitments. License software from us or bring your own licenses and easy integration with Active Directory.
Yeah, as long as you want to open those ports on your firewall. Easy integration, right? Let's be honest. It seems really like a stinker.
I think rather than opening ports on your firewall, you have to do that Amazon, where you get like a private link between your office or data center and Amazon's. Like it's a loop or something.
Okay. Well, that might work. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Or maybe actually I think it's a GRE tunnel or something.
Give us feedback if I'm wrong, but this seems like a stinker to me. Seems like a stinker. Let's talk about this story that's been getting a little bit of traction. Netflix and YouTube dominate online video. Can Amazon catch up? And they're talking about the proportion of web traffic.
Yeah. So Sandvine, a company that uses FreeBSD extensively to monitor traffic, they monitor all the traffic in the U.S. and make these reports on them and sell them. And they found that during peak times, Netflix and YouTube account for 50.2% of all traffic in the U.S.
How can that be?
Because video is a lot bigger.
I mean, I get that.
Like, if you did it in, like, proportion of content being viewed, it's not that big. But if you look at,
total data
pulling up a website is like 100 kilobytes, and the movie is 400 kilobytes a second.
Yeah.
Right?
But they count Netflix, YouTube, BitTorrent, Amazon, and Hulu. Now, I hate being this guy, but the reason why I'm finding this to be kind of bullcrap is they don't have iTunes listed, and iTunes is like the #1 CD store.
Songs are smaller than movies.
I know, but they also sell movies.
Yeah, but they don't sell that many movies. They sell a lot of music, but
I
they
think
don't
they
sell that
do.
many.
That's the thing, though. Is
I
I
don't think
think
they do.
I think they sell several billion a year in movies. That's why I'm kind of wondering, like, if they're
They
only
charge
looking
a
at. Yeah, maybe it's just the price. You're right. It could be.
From Sandvine's perspective, all of that video is delivered by Akamai, not
Akamai, yeah.
iTunes.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess it's hard to track too. I was just wondering too if they're just looking at stuff that's initiated over the web, but BitTorrent ranks in lower than I expected, and Amazon though really ranks in low.
Part of that might be where they're measuring from.
And do you really think Hulu is lower than Amazon? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah. I would buy from Amazon and not Hulu.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I don't even use
Also,
Hulu at all.
the
But
Hulu might be underrepresented because if your cable internet comes from the Hulu traffic doesn't actually go over the internet if you're getting it directly from your cable provider, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which, a lot of shows they won't let you watch unless you prove that you pay for that cable channel, right? And part of that is the reason why Hulu's not as big either, right?
Yeah. And Amazon needs to step it up. I mean, that's ridiculous. They're getting crushed by pretty much everybody.
But you have to do a bunch of signing up and stuff to get the Sandvine report, so I don't actually have the raw numbers. But Scott Long had his slides with the Netflix thing.
And Netflix is just dominating, man. Netflix is
like Netflix, of that 50.2%, Netflix is more than 33% of that.
Yeah. I mean, they are the new cable. They're going to be the new cable TV.
Yep.
That's pretty wild to watch that. And you know what? They're delivering it all. And Netflix is probably the smartest about the way they deliver that content with those CDNs that they've built and distributed.
Well, in the States, about 33% of their traffic, which is 33% of the internet, so 1/9 of the internet, is still delivered by real CDNs, not by the Netflix CDN thing.
Okay.
Partly because some companies, maybe the cable companies behind Hulu, refuse to install Netflix boxes because that would improve the experience of Netflix users on their network. And if you are one of the companies behind Hulu, you purposely try to make Netflix suck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little dirty play, isn't it?
Well, because also Netflix will only offer their Super HD if your ISP has Netflix boxes.
Right. Yeah, and they're rolling out. Netflix announced they're rolling out 4K. That's going to make this. It's going to make this thing. I mean, you think they're taking a lot of bandwidth now? Wait till they get 4K out, right? That's going to be really something to watch. But again, only available to people who have an ISP who can take it, and that Netflix allows it to be turned on for.
Or, well, if your ISP will peer with them at an exchange, that'll work as well. But
okay.
A couple of ISPs, specifically the companies behind Hulu, are being more resistive.
4K only requires 15 megabits on Netflix, according to W.E. Bull in our IRC chat room. 15? I could do that. I could do it. But I already have it. Alan, anything else we need to cover in this week's episode?
There's two more things that you skipped.
Holy, what?
So we have a link about the GCHQ creating fake LinkedIn websites and Slashdot websites.
Right.
I remember you mentioned it earlier, but you skipped the link. Anyway, so yeah, that's they created a fake LinkedIn and then fished people to it to compromise those specific people's computers and information.
Specifically in this case, they grabbed employees at OPEC. Employees at OPEC were visiting LinkedIn, updating their LinkedIn page, and instead, GCHQ is delivering them a completely mocked-up fake LinkedIn page riddled with malware to get into their systems. They actually got administrative level access, yeah.
And they could also get your LinkedIn password and then go into your actual LinkedIn and read your messages and stuff.
Dirty play, inserting quantum tagging. What a bunch of jerks. All right, now we also missed this XSplit story, correct?
Yes. So XSplit is a video streaming software similar to Wirecast or Flash Media Encoder. And their version of the copy protection involves that before you can stream each day, or like when you try to start a stream, you have to log into their website via inside the app. Well, they all of a sudden disabled their support forum and reset everyone's password, which seems to suggest that their forum or user database or something was compromised. But they also they posted this announcement on their website, but they didn't actually email any of their customers about it. And there's really no detail at all other than please change your password.
Smooth.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly.
But the big issue here is that, you're doing... you're trying to live stream and all of a sudden your username and password doesn't work because the company reset it.
Could you imagine how cranky I would be? I've already been having tech problems all week. And if I was getting C blocked because I couldn't get logged into their crappy back-end authorization system, I'd be cranky about that.
Yeah. But mostly it seems like they were hacked, right?
Probably.
And that's why they're resetting the passwords.
Right.
But no details at all yet.
Yeah.
But this one came up because we have a license for XSplit for testing. And
how do you like
went
it?
to do some testing.
What do you think of XSplit?
I don't do the testing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In general, it's kind of, if you need a little bit more than the free Flash Media encoder, but not Wirecast.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been my impression too.
My workflow is pretty tied into Wirecast now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's expensive, but it's pretty good, other than the fact that it's crap.
Exactly my thoughts. All right, Alan. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Now, there's a few things you guys out there could do to make the next episode of TechSNAP a great one. You could give us your feedback. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, pop that contact link, choose TechSNAP from the dropdown. You could submit a story to our subreddit, links.techsnap.tv. Then we can sort through those. Those let us know what you guys are interested in. Your votes and your comments help us with that. Or you can join us live over at jblive.tv on a Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC.
And jblive.info is where you can get the audio feed, which is great for you commuters or those of you that are stuck at a desk or in a low bandwidth situation. We have 64 kilobit versions, actually it's like 56 kilobit, and 128 kilobit versions of our audio stream at jblive.info. Also, we also appreciate your comments and your ratings in the iTunes store. The reason for that, I know, iTunes, I said it, I know, it's horrible, I know, I apologize. But here's the situation. It's how people find podcasts. And when you vote and you rate and you comment in iTunes, that juices the algorithm, so then other people, when they're searching, find our show. So when you do it, you're taking a bullet for the team and letting other people find us. So we appreciate that. You can also use BitTorrent to help us defer our bandwidth costs. We have a link to all of our BitTorrent files in the show notes. Just go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click on TechSNAP 136, and then scroll down below the description, and we have links to the downloads, including the BitTorrent feeds. Alan, is there anything else we need to cover before we run?
Nope.
All right, sir. Well, thank you for the great show. See you right back here next week, okay?
Yep.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.